Cinema very much alive once again, and wait a minute, who is this? All right, of course, Kalaris, we've got ZP, and look who we have of Death Slam League fame, and you may have also seen her on Valorant. We have Mimi here. Mimi, how are you doing? Congratulations here on your debut.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. I think especially with the first big roster shakeup in a while in North America coming in, Melee Creeps exploding, but still being back to nearly win the title last week as well. Just super excited to see how things transpire, especially with the new patch coming in.
Yeah, the new patch already. We may or may not have seen a little bit of that ZP in EU, and a certain item looking really good.
Yeah, as it turns out, Resto Locket is back on the everyone buy this, and in Resto Locket fashion, we had a bunch of ridiculous escapes. Hoot probably topping the charts. Taking a look at what he was able to do on his Mirage, and yeah, I mean, for people hoping for the death of the top 4 heroes from some of the changes, a few of them got hit, but a lot of them staying the same on the top. Probably the most doubts about Mirage, who quickly dispelled the doubts as EU went on.
Yeah, definitely looking pretty darn crazy. But let's take a look at the bracket and see what we've got already that's happened, as well as what is to come, as we will have 2 series coming up as well. It's just the best of 1 into that best of 3, as we've already seen Buff Enjoyers look fantastic. Did you manage to catch some of this, Mimi? Obviously, Buff Enjoyers looked really good in a lot of these recoveries and fantastic in that last game.
Yeah, I was super impressed with them. The game 1 recovery as well. In that one, some of the late game team fights that they were coming on top of was really impressive. And in the second game, the fact that it was, I think 30-8 kills by 15 minutes into the game was just ridiculous. Super aggressive as a squad and pushed that advantage all the way through for a pretty awesome match to take the title.
Yeah, ZP, did you also feel like you'd blacked out slightly during that last game? Because I was there almost. It was just a bloodbath constantly.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that game is that it was still at points, despite how bad the early to mid game was for Abrahams in that game, I mean, I think if they could have rewound time a little bit and just managed to kill Vrake in that one key moment, I think there's actually a time where they could have flipped it, but Vrake ended up getting the biggest heals of all time, leaves into a 4-man team wipe, and there's no way back. But, looking to NA here, look, I gotta say it officially, it's a new sponsored team in North America, and it's one that we've seen in other esports. Pulsar picking up a team, and, I'll wait till I get the roster, Kalaris, but there's a lot of known names.
Yeah, definitely. As we'll take a look at that to start things off. Pulsar Esports, of course, there are, as you say, names that everybody's going to be familiar with here, Mimi, to get things rolling. And this team as a whole technically was in the APAC Deadlock scene for a little while. They didn't quite have as much flourishing compared to Night Shift supporting NA and EU as a whole. But it's good to see these names on the board. We see a lot of them stream from time to time, and Hydration's back as well.
Yeah, it's pretty sick to see Hydration, who was one of those names who was around a ton in the early days of Night Shift, putting on the different Hydration rosters throughout. But now returning alongside Scout, who had such success with Melee Creeps. I know you guys were talking a lot last week about how Melee Creeps breaking up is going to kind of give opportunities for more of these teams in North America to come up and maybe look to compete now that you've spread that talent out a little bit more. And I think you're already starting to see that with those 2 very experienced players coming into the roster, and then some guys who maybe haven't even played a Night Shift before, but have been super impressive throughout their time on Ranked when you look at people like Crayon, like Parzelian, to come into this roster as well, ZP.
Yeah, also, here's the thing that I want everyone to really reflect on the state of NA. How have we hit the point in North America where Crayon is the guy that's playing in top level competition and Ido is the one doing the watch party? Please sit back and reflect on this. And yeah, honestly, funny games, Ido's gonna be back to comp soon. But for this week in particular, the roles have reversed.
Yeah, he's paradox swapped the whole situation. It is wild stuff coming in. But yeah, I'm wondering if Jason obviously already posed the question, will we see Aiden on that Vindicta? Maybe that would be some good fun. And let's check on the other side of this match as well, as of course we have Melee Creeps, or is it? Considering our previous week of maneuvers here, ZP, I was asking you exactly which one is the evil Melee Creeps. A little bit of here, I think.
Well, they embraced it. We had Goober coming in as evil melee creeps Goober, and obviously some of this comes with some of the memes of how the breakup went down. Some people may be more demanding than others where it goes. Some people get some nicknames. We're not gonna go into it, but the community knows the story. But the interesting thing here is that for melee creeps, look, all the praise on the Snakes for filling in last minute as a sub last week for melee creeps, but they got Braden back and probably without internet issues here. And Braden back in the challenger match last week also looked really good. Also of note, of course, is that OC's, if you weren't watching last week, has pulled a DMOV and has gone from EU to NA, and he's going to be here for at least the next few weeks, lest he be locked out. And we'll see how that goes. But I think you have to give it to melee creeps for being able to just actually assemble a roster short notice with all the talent that they lost. I mean, losing Ido, Do, Fishcake all in one go, that is difficult to actually come back and be like, yeah, we got a roster that can compete. And they looked really good, particularly the fact that I would say they've gotten almost better at early the mid-game aggression, but actually adapting when they're behind. And some of the things that more veteran teams tend to excel at is something where they've actually taken a step back. But it's promising because you can build on this.
Yeah. Go on, Mimi.
No, I was just going to say, I was so impressed with the new guys coming into this roster as well, especially for Goober, getting to watch him on this team. He's always been such an impressive mechanical player in the past, but I felt like he fitted in so well in this roster, playing the Silver last week, especially when they were pushing that early mid-game tempo. He was taking over a lot of those games. And despite the fact that this was a pretty much complete rebuild with only that core 2 coming back in, they looked very cohesive in their decision making. I think that when you look back at that game and what really led to them losing the money match was just one mid-boss call in the middle of game 2 that didn't quite go their way, where that contest comes through, that falls apart, and then it slips into this third game loss as well. But the fact that they came in with presumably not a huge amount of practice time, with just kind of having cobbled this roster together in time for Night Shift last week and bringing it that close against an established team was really impressive. They maybe disappeared game 3, a little bit like CP right now.
No. I figured out what happened. So I was helping out with observing earlier today.
Okay.
And to do that, I changed my OBS from 1440p down to 1080p. And as a result, it was ultra zooming me in. Now I've changed it back to normal resolution. So hopefully on doing this, we're back to normal and not, ultra zoomed in. Because that was the only thing that changed. And no,
No, keep going. Oh, never mind. All right, well.
No.
You're going to see every pore.
No. we don't need that. I try and get on top of skincare, but it's still not great. We don't need to see that level of detail. We're good.
My wife makes me do the whole moisturizing routine every morning, man. You gotta keep on it. We're getting old now. You know what I mean? I think though, Mimi, you hit the nail on the head when it came to Goober looking great. Because even in the match that they lost at the very end, he looked fantastic on holiday as well, right? So I want to see more of that Goober here for the melee creeps.
Yeah, the other guy who was kind of a big question mark for me was Birdie, who obviously doesn't have a huge amount of competitive experience. But I thought he slotted in really nicely. They had to make this kind of shift with Saya playing more of the frontliner, laning a little less with John, breaking up some of the old classics for melee creeps that we've known for a long time. But he looked great when he was playing on the Viscous, had a lot of key saves, especially game 1 when he was playing the Ivy as well, and just looked comfortable on the team. And I think that's the biggest thing you can say about them. They were a new team, they had huge changes, but they looked comfortable, they looked cohesive, they could have won last week, and now they've had another week of practice to come into this Night Shift.
Also, this may not be entirely accurate. I just got to add on for Saya. I feel like Saya is just going through the cycle of I'll do it myself repeatedly over different roles, where you look at Saya's role changes over time. And I think what people have to be looking at here is Saya's now more of his frontliner era over the last month or two. Just wait until, maybe there's going to be a rift. Maybe, John and Saya split someday, which is probably unlikely because they're best friends. But if they did split, if such a relationship breakup ever happened, then we get the Saya M1 arc. I'm just saying it could happen.
Yeah, technically could, with where he's been flexing too and seeing where he's... it's always a pleasure watching Saya, right? He's absolutely one of the best players in the world. So, but it looks like our Mo and Krill is on the way. Saya versus Crayon. Where are you leaning, ZP?
I mean, it's all upside here for Crayon. No pressure whatsoever. Saya, you don't want to lose the Crayon here in his first appearance. Certainly not in the Mo 1-on-1. But you got Crayon going on in there, and it's actually close.
Oh, the parry just missing, though. That might be it.
Ooh, that was so close. Holy moly. And he jumps off the roof and flies away like Spider-Man. Crazy scenes here, Mimi.
Yeah, it was. See, I've come out here. I'm at Golden Boy's house to run this show, and I don't know how, despite him being like, I don't know, 45 years old, he has the world's smallest monitor. I could barely see Mo and Krill in that entire thing. So I don't know, GB. You gotta invest in a bigger side monitor. But we're headed into the draft. More importantly now.
Are there any surprises that Doorman leaves the room quickly here as EP?
I mean, I'm just like, I'm seeing like the roasted corpse of Golden Boy from like 2,000 miles away. That was unreal. Just the age being put on blast. But okay, Doorman down. Okay, this is actually unreal. Pulsar coming in with the early ban on Calico. It is not going to follow the classic, ban out the main 4. So this is really interesting because I guess effectively, maybe the logic here is that Melee Creeps gets one of the remaining good 4, and then Pulsar gets the last 2. If it goes by that logic, then, okay, Billy's off the table. They're going to be able to come in here, though, and they're going to be able to, at the very least, pick up the Pocket, and we'll see what they go there. But Pocket Mirage would be what you would expect from recent history.
Yeah, I actually really like that idea when teams are the second pick. There's the Mirage. I think it would be shocking if it wasn't the Pocket to follow through as well. But I feel like you're not too mad about that if you're Melee Creeps. When you've been looking at the recent games, Billy is just so incredibly strong. He's a good laner. He's impactful in the mid game. He's one of the best characters late game in terms of just one ult turning it around.
Okay.
But instead of the Pocket, that's the Geist getting picked up for Pulsar, which she's been in a really strong position right now. But I don't know, conceding that Pocket is an interesting decision.
I'm not entirely surprised by the guys because again, I do think it has like a lot of like challenges across.
McGinnis going second?
All right, I'm turning my microphone off. It's over.
Okay, can production double check? Like, can we get confirmation that we're not getting trolled? Like, okay, multiple layers here. A, you've picked McGinnis. B, you've picked McGinnis in the first half of your draft. But was McGinnis actually going to get picked earlier? What has happened to NA?
That's crazy. I mean, the last time Melee Creeps played the Guinness, I was not the biggest fan of it. This kind of worries me a little because heading towards this next round of picks and then mid-stage bans, I almost wonder if this is drafting towards a position where there's not a lot of room for John to get one of his comfort characters with the Geist going away, with, I would think, Pulsar maybe considering a Ven ban second here to just kind of draft him into a corner.
Yeah, all bets are off.
Yeah.
The Bebop.
Well, they take down the Bebop, which, I mean, honestly, Melee Creeps have played recently. I like what you had mentioned where, like, maybe getting rid of the Ven would have been ideal because, I mean, the reason why you'd want to get rid of the Ven is that when John hasn't gotten Geist or Ven in recent times, well, it hasn't been great for John. We saw Warden, and Warden was entirely unconvincing when he had to play it, and yeah, but instead, Melee Creeps can come out the Drifter ban, and I'm still, like, trying to wrap my head around the McGinnis that early with other things still available and on the board. But one thing that's worth noting is that NA is still rating Viscous pretty highly, even when EU is like, ooh, that Splatter nerf was a little bit too much.
In EU, obviously, in those drafts, we saw once or twice Infernus going really deep into those drafts, but no touch of him just yet here at all, despite this interesting draft. I'm perplexed so far. Holiday, okay. Chat goes crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
they've caught up.
It's a strong pick. I mean, with how this has gone, though, you will get the option of the Ven or the Infern later for John here for Melee Creeps, which kind of frees you up to maybe go something else here. They'll lock in the Lash. I think Lash always feels pretty good when you're going into something like the Geist, but there's a lot of characters that have kind of natural ways to get away from that Death Slam with Cube, with Tornado, with Riposte as well.
Yeah, also corners. Get out of line of sight. It's a good point.
Also, something to note here for Melee Creeps, this could be the rare John Lash. Like, John has played Lash at times. It hasn't been seen as often recently, but when other picks are unavailable, that's been the case. Maybe Melee Creeps like, I don't know if we want the Ven at all in this instance. But also, okay, Abram's gonna come in. I was gonna mention, it is a hydration team, and one of the things that hydration used to do a lot on old teams, that even when Mo and Krill wasn't meta, Mo and Krill would still somehow make an appearance, but not gonna be a jump scare Mo and Krill. But hey, Mo and Krill fans still got to eat a little bit good earlier today, at least one appearance when he's been absent for a long period of time.
Dynamo! Yeah! Okay, well, his one change of having Singularity go down by 15 seconds, hooray, but I don't think that was really triggered this. Surely it's just, they've got some faith in it here, Mimi.
Yeah, I do like kind of bringing it in as this last pick. Having Billy Dynamo is a really nasty combo with the Lash as well. You have a huge amount of late team fighting potential with this comp. It is really interesting to see them go for a draft with no like traditional scaling carry locked in. I feel like Melee Creeps is always the team you think of like, they're going to almost guarantee have a Venator or something akin to it. They're going to put a lot of priority into John on that role. That's kind of what they've always been good at in past iterations. So this feels like a little bit of a break from the identity with this new roster. We saw last week Popper's Pupils running kind of a similar draft with no scaling carry late into that finals as well. So honestly, just really excited to see what they're cooking with the McGinnis, with some of the interesting choices in this one.
CP?
As I look at, honestly, I gotta give it to Melee Creeps, where it's like, wait, they didn't hear that there'd be any new casters here on Night Shift filling in, and like, you know what? Let's just break let's go with like the most ridiculous draft we've seen in months and go with the McGinnis Dynamo combination. Like, look, in theory, it could work, right? Like, they did the right thing. You saved Dynamo for the very end, and okay, it's gonna be
John Dynamo.
He did do this. Like, you go far enough back in history, like John did have like the very short-lived John Dynamo arc. I'm a little bit surprised to see it back in here. And yeah, I mean, it's not without its merits as far as team fighting goes. And, you know, the fact that Dynamo can work as a final pick when you don't open up for the Sinclair counter pick. However, in terms of ease of execution, Pulsar, they're running the draft that if you were to look at it, especially last week, you'd be like, okay, Pulsar definitely favoring them. And I also think, you know, a lot of people may be looking on the sidelines being like, you know, Melee Creeps versus a team that, you know, is brand new. You know, surely Melee Creeps is going to win this. I'm a little bit scared for Melee Creeps. I mean, the upside here is that their early game is going to be quite good, particularly with Goober on Holiday, but, you know, that does tail off. Like, you think about the last map we saw with Melee Creeps, Goober went wild on the Holiday, and then you get past 15 minutes, it's like, well, maybe not so much.
I've got it. The Bucket 3 movement increase. Dynamo McGinnis? ZP, it's all making sense.
Oh, boy. You know?
No, you don't like that?
I think it goes deeper than that, is what I'll say. But hey, no. Or someone's gonna be like, I knew it. Dynamo got the 15 seconds off his ult. His time is now.
All right, let's get to it. Best of one here. Melee Creeps against Pulsar Esports here for the Night Shift.
Well, thank you so much, Claris, and getting into it. Well, congratulations. Welcome to Deadlock. It's a McGinnis Dynamo game. You know, anything can happen in any game, and this is a best of one, so Melee Creeps putting all on the line with something a little bit more unconventional.
You know, I had heard about the notorious Saya John laning duo. I really didn't think we were going to see it with him playing the support here, but a really interesting one. I've been trying to theorycraft and think why they're playing this McGinnis, and I feel like even if you want to play her, putting her so early into the draft is really, really interesting. So I'm just kind of curious what direction this build is going to go for Birdie and how much value it's actually going to pick up here.
Well, I think when McGinnis gets value right now, like McGinnis can do well by virtue of the fact that you get Guardians down pretty quickly. Like the last time Melee Creeps played the McGinnis, you had Saya on the McGinnis, and like Saya basically, they were able to get their Guardian down super quick, I think around like 5 minutes, and then they just rotated around the map as like, all right, Saya's like, now I'm gonna go mid lane, now I'm gonna go to the far lane, and Saya was just knocking down Guardians. And you get a bit of a tempo edge on it, but the rest of the game, McGinnis was also just kind of getting dove on and struggling to actually get value. So I guess it remains to be seen if that was an issue last time of just not capitalizing on the advantage or, you know, other factors. But, you know, honestly, excited to see if it can work.
Yeah, but when you're talking about that game that you brought up as well, I felt like when I was watching it, it was like maybe one team fight where the ult had impact, and other than that, it kind of felt like McGinnis disappeared after those first 15 or so minutes of the game. So to see what it brings out here.
Also, Birdie being on, where Birdie generally is like a support, but first kill, gonna go over towards Goober. Not a lot of surprise there. I mean, you think back to last time we saw Goober on Holiday. I mean, Goober made this hero ban-worthy when Holiday was never being picked. So the fact that Holiday got better in recent times just means that the first 15 minutes of the game where Holiday is strongest, Goober not only can often win lane off of this, but, you know, is pretty active on roaming, which probably goes hand in hand with some of the early McGinnis lane pressure that, you know, Melee Creeps is going to try and leverage.
For sure. They have a lot of tools to try and snowball this game pretty quickly. But it's become almost the Goober patch where he was getting the bans on Holiday, he was catching bans on his Viscous as well. Now both those heroes have kind of gotten into better spots. Maybe a little less so with Viscous if you were watching EU, where he didn't really get touched in any of the drafts whatsoever, but NA still having faith as Connor picks that one up.
Yeah, you know, Viscous just, or rather, Goober just has to be going to the team and being like, okay, look, you know, you like me right now while my heroes are meta. Just don't do what happened in the past and be like, Goober, your heroes are dead, and so are you, and just, you know, yeet Goober off the team, which was his last experience within comp. But taking a look at the lanes right now, things feels very quiet in the start of this NA game relative to the last Abraham's Buff Enjoyers game, where a bloodbath had already occurred by about 4 minutes in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had like 10 kills by this point in the game back in that match. So there's maybe some kill potential here. Already down to 300 health on the McGinnis, but manages to sneak back towards the Guardian.
And of course, part of the penalty here is a little bit of pressure onto the tier 1, but yeah, I mean, for Birdie, that's going to be the story of the game all day, is that teams are pretty relentless about diving into McGinnis. So, you know, for Birdie, the question is, how do you stay alive against some of that pressure? And, you know, Splatter might have gotten nerfed, but the early damage still, it's a lot of lane pressure, because you look at the left side here and, you know, Pocket and Birdie just barely struggling to hang on.
Yeah, it does feel like a pretty good matchup still. When you're looking at the comp for Pulsar, I feel like you can see like very traditional win conditions for what they're playing. You're going to have hydration and scout early with that kind of pick potential and the early snowball that Apollo can pick up. And then late game, you have both Pars and Aiden playing these very traditional scaling characters that have both looked so incredibly strong in recent patches. I think like the one interesting part of their draft is seeing that Abrams get picked up, where a lot of teams in the last few night shifts have just kind of moved away from picking much frontline at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. It goes back and forth. Really good a week is like, no, we don't like frontline. And then you start out today with the BE game, and it's like, oh, we love all the frontline. Pars, a little bit low here on the guys. Saya, though, also low in turn. Diving a little bit problematic with John still at full HP. And, okay, elsewhere. Again, the split screen McGinnis cam on pressure, but over here, things getting a little bit close. Brayden, super, super low as we see Goober on the move.
Oh, the barrel may be enough. Scout 1 HP, and that's a finish off from Goober. Pretty early lasso online, and I think Goober is just going to stay as active. I believe that's already his second kill into this one, and that is one of the biggest concerns if you're Pulsar here against Melee Creeps, that they have a lot of these heroes who can get that very early tempo, get those Guardians down with the McGinnis, get Goober online, roaming on this Holiday, and this comp does start to get quite scary.
Yeah, and also one thing, you know, people are kind of wondering at times when you look at something like the Melee Creeps comp, like, who's position 1? My guess would be it's probably going to be OCs absorbing a lot of the farm here. I mean, OCs tends to be a pretty rich pocket for those that are wondering, but it is different because, you know, even, you know, for someone like John, he's going to be taking more of a step back. But taking a look at the Guardian, again, McGinnis trying to go for the early Guardian hit, but pressure coming in the other side. Abrams in off the seismic slam, and Birdie now in some real danger. You see Abrams in hot pursuit, low HP, tries to go for the parry, does not connect, and the final heavy melee does the job.
Yeah, really nice follow-up there, and that's going to keep this Guardian alive just for a little bit longer. OC's already low. He's going to try and fight into this one with the Affliction, but getting battered back, this might be a bit of a commit. He's got his opponent down to 100 HP. OC's couldn't quite get that finish despite the Affliction. And that's a pretty big cooldown gone for. Not a lot back for the Melee Creeps.
I imagine somewhere there's a defender being like, OCs wins that on ping, but also Birdie actually able to get the final shot onto Crayon, so Crayon not actually leaving with his life after all. But one thing of note here is that we're 7 minutes in, and if the plan on this McGinnis was get a super early Guardian down and then move on, they're going to get the Guardian here, but I think they would have liked to have got a little bit earlier. But, you know, from here on out, you got to look at the rotation for Birdie. All signs would point to Birdie getting out of left and moving to one of the other lanes at this point.
Yeah, trying to funnel some of that farm onto OCs as well, but Well, chance for a swap there, just narrowly missed out onto the Lash. Over towards the mid lane here as Goober has stayed active. I think that barrel just coming into Dunk with a headshot on top of it onto Aiden. And the Lash ult just going to expire onto nothing.
Yeah, the ground death slam just a little bit off the mark, but okay, to no one's surprise, this is the cornerstone of the McGinnis strategy, where, we called it from the beginning. Birdie, once you get one Guardian down, you're going to rotate over, and it's 3-man for melee creeps here, just looking for the Guardian. You drop the wall, you get heavy pressure, and the mid Guardian's going to go down with rapid speed off this rotation for melee creeps.
I mean, you called out that they were going slow on claiming the Guardians, and within a minute, 2 more are down, and the Wrecking Crew, I think, with eyes set on that final one over towards the right just shortly here.
Now, the question is, looking at the overall game state, is that does this put you in a spot where, Pulsar isn't going to be able to team fight effectively, or, you're going to see Pars like super behind? Because I think when I look at late game status here, the fact is for Pulsar, if they keep things even, Geist, Mirage, and also, I mean, frankly, backed up by Paul through the mid game, it's the melee creeps team fighting gets a little bit awkward here. But similar to the idea that, like, when you have a B-buff, it just gets caught out. What's going on? But with a Dynamo, you always have the chance of, hey, just get a singularity and win.
Yeah, it is always that massive win condition to come through. I think that with what you're saying, just the power of these ultimates means that despite not having that traditional scaling carry, there's always going to be a way back into the game for melee creeps. They have pick potential with Goober. You could rely on the lasso. You could rely on a big team fight. Like, they do have a ton of win conditions in this comp. I think the issue is just that those are always going to be a lot more difficult to execute, as I don't think there's a chance to get the swap off. That will be Pars going down on the Geist, and I think pretty shortly this final Guardian follows as they'll chase down for one more kill, pick that up, and now for melee creeps, is the goal accomplished? All of these tier 1 Guardians off the map.
Okay, action still continuing over into the middle. Thinking like Scout just on the quick retreat. Aiden unable to get away as this goes down, and melee creeps, the focus on the early game really starting to shine now. Nearly 10k up on the aggregate. And again, when you're running a comp with Holiday, this is oftentimes what you expect. It's when she's at her best, and you've like kind of added on here with the McGinnis. So, I think any analysis on late game scaling here is almost to the wins here, where melee creeps, they're looking to get 20k up by around 20 minutes into the game with how they're playing it here. And for Pulsar, they kind of have to take a step back and hope for a favorable rift fight now post 10 minutes. Both buffs going the way of melee creeps.
Yeah, with a pretty significant deficit though, I think they'll be in a okay position to try and get that rift online, as it's going to be a pop on that Affliction. Gets a connection, but you have to chase pretty damn far to actually try and get any kill onto Crayon here. I think the shoulder shard should be enough to get him out, and now OCs has to turn the other way and back off this space.
Yeah, I mean, what happens there, you make a little bit of space, you have urn control. That's Aaron. Okay, Connor gets caught in rotation. So 2 down again for Pulsar. And I mean, melee creeps continuing to just kind of get what they want done here. And oh my goodness, Crayon getting chased here. Low HP Abrams as Goober just lands a Sky Barrel. And I mean, early game, it's looking troublesome for Pulsar, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the nightmare playing against Goober on the Holiday. You saw the read there onto exactly where Crayon was positioned down in the Veil, sees the health bar off of that barrel. Is now on a 5-kill streak. Is another kind of difficult spot. Connor trying to defend the doubles. Dynamo ult, bit of a whiff. But they do hold on to the souls picked up from those double centers.
Dynamo whiff always feels bad. I mean, a little bit less cooldown from the casting buff, but
15 seconds left. Surely it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, we're laughing here, but watch this turn into a mid-boss later on. It's like, it's up just in time. The buff. Yoshi's vision complete. But the rift is up, and Pulsar looking to try and bring things back a bit, and gonna get a few extra rift troopers for their trouble that melee creeps are gonna be there to immediately clean up with a few stomps, and lasso from long range in onto Connor. No escape.
That's so nice. To Goober getting the chase onto at least one there. I think you could see Saya looking to see if there was a chance to get the chains and get a little more out of that fight, but they're happy just to eat up their opponent's jungle here, stay ahead still by 10k even after losing that rift. They've done a really good job of keeping the tempo up, basically living in Pulsar's jungle at this point. I'd love to see the total kills for Goober at this point. I think it's starting to get pretty out of hand here for melee creeps.
Scout, kind of ambitious swap there. Just does not hit the tail end of the Dynamo hitbox. And also in terms of item builds, one thing we've been seeing more and more, both in NA and EU, is, especially for people roaming, is we want to go trophy collector. Goober on top of it. Kind of curious how many stacks he's at, and for now, just looking for another shot on the corner. Gets the support from the Magnus wall in the back, but maybe a situation to let go. Still pretty good poke.
Yeah, if it weren't for the cube, I think Connor would have been dead there, but manages to sustain through the damage. Melee Creeps continuing to keep really heavy prio here in the mid lane, creating a bit of an opening to push towards the left as well, but they'll fall away and, again, just be happy to collect their opponent's farm, keep this heavy lead continuing.
Yeah, and I think, again, the thing to focus on here is that for Melee Creeps and the comp they've built, this is kind of where they want to be. This is what you've kind of engineered with the early McGinnis pick and some of the other picks that comprise your roster, particularly the Holiday. You cannot fall behind. So, if Pulsar is able to even up or just get a good team fight, the win condition for Melee Creeps goes dramatically lower. So this is just a matter of, can Melee Creeps keep up the solo pressure for the rest of the game? Saya goes in on the Crayon and may have been off more than they could choose. Saya looking low, but here comes Goober in from the back on support, double barrel. No lasso, may not need it for now. Taking the fight to Aiden. Aiden low HP and down.
The superheroes just showed up the second there was any pressure there, with the Affliction connecting on top of just the straight up damage from Goober through the TP. There's a bit of an attempt for OCs to try and cut that player down, but Crayon manages to sneak away, and so ends up only being 1-for-1 in the end. I think that could have been a lot worse for Pulsar, with two of their players getting afflicted in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Pulsar, you're happy to get out with just that much, but Sai again out for blood this time. Going for Scout, former teammate from a long time ago. Scout gonna try and take refuge into the underground, low HP. And Scout might have been able to make enough clearance there, but over and over again, it's Melee Creeps continuing to look for fights, press every bit of the advantage that they currently have.
Yeah, I don't think that Pulsar have been free to ever exist inside of their own jungle, to have their own space in this game. That's another lasso. Good night to Connor. That's like the third time this game he's eaten one of those lassos from Goober. It's been a total takeover from this Holiday. Complete momentum here with Melee Creeps. Despite the comeback mechanics, they stayed a pretty steady 8 to 10k up. I feel like the one sign of hope for Pulsar is that you're getting some farm onto Barzilian. He is keeping up with this game, but I still think you need to see a pretty big mistake from Melee Creeps in a late game fight here to even give them the chance to turn this advantage back into their favor.
The upside for Pulsar is that you do have the Cinderella effect on Holiday, but hold the phone here, swap on the John. John getting hit from all sides, has Singularity up, but low HP, just trying to buy a little bit of time for the rotation. You look at the minimap, the cavalry is coming as John makes the retreat. The commit isn't there, but now we got Goober rotating in, barrel once more onto Scout. Gonna eat the swap in the stun, and Goober bit off more than he could chew there. Up into the sky goes Crayon, seismic slam down and in as Chain Gang goes off, but out of nowhere comes John, Singularity, enough to take down Pars, but still low HP for Crayon, can't get out of the aftermath either.
And after it all, Scout somehow gets away for a moment, but that little last kick towards the floor from the Dynamo is enough to finish it off. John looked out of that fight, but the ultimate absolutely perfect to bring it back in. Affliction connects onto Aiden, and this one is not getting any easier for Pulsar. He's going to try and TP away and just narrowly gets out of that one. I think just half a second away from his ult getting cancelled, as John will be able to pick up this Walker and further the lead just that bit more for Melee Creeps.
First Walker of the game here for Melee Creeps, but yeah, as I was trying to get into earlier, is that Holiday has a Cinderella effect where eventually the coach turns into a pumpkin, and for Melee Creeps, the goal here is to secure enough of a lead when Holiday eventually starts falling off. And so far, they've been able to do that. This urn, if they're able to dunk it, will add in that even more. But, this is a game where even a bit, any mistake from Melee Creeps could easily let Pulsar back into the game. So, this is sort of the stakes we're riding on right now. But any picks you can get, especially if it's slowing down Pars or Aiden, are super premium for Melee Creeps right now. But Goober once more, under pressure.
Yeah, had to use the lasso there. Just trying to get that Abrams under the Walker. Has to back away. Doing a good job of keeping this map controlled, denying that urn from getting dunked on in. Towards the secret shot. A little bit of damage done onto Brayden, despite the swap though. Again, the support is here. Melee Creep's doing a really good job of condensing whenever these fights are coming in. Abrams dangerous in these corridors, but he doesn't have a lot of help to work with. Now trying to back away is that Singularity from the Dynamo will back Melee Creeps out of this one, and the fight somewhat returns to neutral.
Yeah, great quantum to go in, and okay, Scout caught at the end round. The fight started with Scout going for the swap on the Brayden. Follow through wasn't necessarily there. John comes in to help clean things up, and Crayon, low HP, pinned in from both sides. But guess what? That's a Resto Locket, and that is a new lease on life. Feels even better on heroes with high survivability like Abrams.
Are they just trading patches of Resto Locket is OP, nerf Resto Locket, bring it back a little bit? It feels like we've been going on this game for a while. Because
Resto Locket is just one of those items that I think it's hard to get the balance right. How do you get Resto Locket in a spot where people are buying it, but it's not the whole game buying it? And I think the recent buff where, you know, it gives more per Broon has now put it back in the category of like, are you an Abrams in the late game and would you like an extra 850 HP that isn't immediately visible to your opponent plus stamina?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, of course you say yes. You're like, that sounds fantastic. Give me more.
Goober with another lasso. It's an opportunity onto the Mirage. That's a really good connection. Aiden, I don't think he has a way out of this one. They end up using the chains just to further that kill as Crayon has to try and back away on this Walker defense with the damage already done. Another kill for Melee Creeps. The Walker soon to fall as well. Man, Goober has been such a beast on this holiday. Yet to get shut down. I think one death so far off that earlier shoulder charge, but besides that, has just been taking over in these positions, setting up the perfect fights for his team.
Also, Goober at this point has to be at around like 7 or 8 trophy collector stacks, if I had to guess. Like, it was a good trophy collector buy in the beginning and likely has paid off and then some at this point. So 20k difference separating the two teams, and I think one of the things that feels really bad when you look at the KD here is the fact that Aiden has died 6 times, and one of the things that could get you back into the game, even with a mismatched aggregate, would be a disproportionately farm Mirage, but Aiden has been in struggle city the entire game, and a lot of that is because of Goober, who's made it his mission to introduce him to the magic of lasso.
Yeah, getting caught off in a lot of those ganks. And well, the nightmare continues. Rift coming online, so great time to look for a pick. That's another lasso connecting for Goober. I don't think anyone quite close enough to follow up and get that kill as Melee Creeps attempting towards mid-boss here. It's going to be 6v6. Do they want to bait this in fight, or are they actually committing to it?
I mean, they're ahead enough that they could go for the commit. I mean, the ace up their sleeve is that they have Singularity on John. Trying to fight in here with the Dynamo oftentimes is a death sentence, and Singularity just going to be popped preemptively. Multiple people caught in. We'll see where the rejuves go. So far, looking good for Melee Creeps. 1 stolen away by Crayon, but 2 for Melee Creeps here so far. The affliction's massive! It's a 5-man affliction, Mimi! Pulsar! They're dying of the plague!
This is absolutely massive for Melee Creeps. The cleanup squad is there. John, Brayden following through as the last few members of Pulsar desperately try and run out of this one. Really great call there. On the same timing that comeback rift was coming up, Melee Creeps send it on the mid-boss, pick up 2 of the crystals, further their lead just that bit more, and they're getting earned. They're getting the rift. They have absolutely everything they could want in this game.
Yeah, and again, their game plan from the start was get ahead, stay ahead, and they are doing just that. They pick up 2 out of 3 rejuve crystals, they get the rift, and we're getting a replay here of just how everyone got slapped with the frogs. Wait, over, in, everyone's grouped up. Easy conversion for OCs.
Yeah, I love the patience from OCs, not rushing into using that ultimate. Finds the perfect moment after the Singularity expires. It's an absolutely huge effect.
So, the lead has ballooned to 30,000. We have a Mirage that I think at this point may be at 7 deaths. And for Pulsar, you know, a comp that needed to survive until the late game to turn things around, the late game seems further away than ever, even 20 minutes in. And at this point, Mimi, for Pulsar, you're kind of looking to scout and you're hoping, okay, maybe we get a swap, maybe we get something here to bring it back in our favor once the rejuves are out of action. But you're going to have to exist on the map with all the pressure that Melee Creeps have been bringing, you know, especially coming from Goober on the holiday.
Yeah, I don't know if Crayon is going to escape from this one. The chase down coming through. 2 players to try and peel him away. And luckily has that movement to slip outside. Maybe actually spotted on the other side by Goober, though. as the rest of Melee Creeps is just breaking down these base guardians, fighting on the other side as well. Pulsar was looking for an in, but this could still be it. Pressure onto the Lash, having to run and hide, but that's a big start on the other side as Saya, Goober pick up their respective kills, and well, there looked like a chance to maybe get one, and it is a rejuve to fall. The damage is being done elsewhere.
Brayden, rejuve out, again taking down the half on the retreat, but should be able to get out without an issue. And wait, look at the base right now. What's going on? We just got people going for shrines. That is Birdie and Saya hopping on in. Saya making the call, rush up middle, go for the shrine. Shrine at half HP right now. It is getting absolutely chunked. Are they gonna be able to get there and get out? This would be adding salt into the wound. I mean, a 50K deficit into down a shrine for the rest of the game. The shot call paying out for Melee Creeps.
The macro is so good there. You saw Pulsar looking on a fight over towards that jungle side, and they had the potential to get at least that rejuve out, but enough time was bought. The pressure was put up over towards that other lane there as they get the kill onto, I believe it was Crayon earlier into that fight, and then just further their way all the way towards the base. Now a shrine up. The lead is massive at 40K here for Melee Creeps.
Yeah, and at this point in the game, this is the true upside of playing a comp like Melee Creeps did that had such good early game presence and pushing. You've gone into a snowball now that regardless of what positive attributes you're going to say about, you know, having a Geist or a Mirage, it simply doesn't matter when the other team is this much ahead of you. And Pulsar, their only hope now is Melee Creeps to make a mistake. We'll see if it happens. A little bit of engage here on the Saya, but instantly Scout running for cover as the entirety of Melee Creeps comes on in. Chain Gang out and Crayon first to fall.
Yeah, down goes one, and well, the pressure continuing. Tony Lasan just to try and get a little bit of space, get some damage in as well onto a few different players on Melee Creeps, but the movement there is good. Death Slam in onto that Geist, was the most farmed player on Pulsar, doesn't have the swap online, and now down to basically 1 HP, fighting in the hallway with John. He'll finish the job, and now 2 up. An excellent fight for Melee Creeps. They're losing a walker for it in the interim. What else can they get in exchange?
Yeah, and for Pulsar, that's the, oh, thank God we have an extra slot walker, where it was 24 minutes, no extra slots being given from walkers. First walker down, helping that to some extent. But again, Pulsar at this point in desperate need of help from somewhere. And it's going to be difficult because not only do you just kind of lose on an average engage, you still have the very high win conditions of John getting a good singularity. Or the fact that, frankly, Mimi, mid-boss is up in 2 minutes. If I'm Melee Creeps, I force the issue because I don't think Pulsar can really contest effectively if Melee Creeps has their ults up.
Yeah, what do they have? Multi-swap, shoulder charge, that's basically all you can hope for compared to probably 3 of the best ults you can get for that, 4 if you're counting the chains as well. You have a huge amount of tools just to shore up those crystals. They already went for that play in the last one. They'll pick up Earn here, maybe look for a pick off that, and well, Goober's achieved that goal already. Connor goes down, 50-second timer, and mid-boss now 90 seconds away as they just look to further this lead.
Just hear the squeal from Viscous from across the map, but another Earn gonna be taken care of, courtesy of Melee Creeps. Lead carefully being protected. Because of course the only thing that would be particularly bad here is that it's great when you get a lead like this, but everyone remembers if you throw a lead like this, and it's why even when you're up to this degree, you still have to make smart game decisions. You cannot take it for granted because a simple stop turns into best comeback ever relatively easily. So for Melee Creeps, I don't think they're going to take too much in the way of risk here, especially not with mid-boss up in 44 seconds. But
this is dangerous for Pars, though. Look at the setup. 3 players just hiding on the high ground as John shows forward in lane, just egging them on to try and go for that pick. They're kind of not buying into that bluff whatsoever. No one wants to test up against Goober, who's been so active on this holiday.
All right. 50K separating the 2 teams. Next Rift is going to come up. In theory, when you're a bit behind, you like the Rift fight as a team that's behind, but all the comeback mechanics in the world don't necessarily make it great. Because, and also there's the element here too, where sometimes teams will go like, okay, just cap the Rift and we'll jump on you after, but...
Yeah, but it's also right now, if you show on Rift, surely Melee Creeps is just going to go mid-boss. And they will. They don't even need to see you on the Rift. They have the ults. They know they'll win this fight. They're going to run it back.
Yeah, so, I mean, the comp Melee Creeps has, it is very much strong on mid-boss. And, you know, for Pulsar, you have to contest. And in fact, it's just going to be a fake out into the jump outside and look for a rumble. Melee Creeps, full disengage, lasso onto Crayon once more, into the wall, into just dead, the wall entirely superfluous in the moment. And as a result, Melee Creeps, they just get to go back in onto the mid-boss and still have a Singularity, Death Slam, Chain Gang, all in reserve for the eventual contest. We'll see if Pulsar can do a miracle. A tiny Lasan from afar. See how it goes. The swap is big! The swap is massive! You're able to get 2 of the rejuves opened up, but can Pulsar actually win the fight off the aftermath? Chain Gang can come on out. The stat difference still may be too much, Mimi. 2 down off the initial engage, and even with 2 rejuves, not enough to turn things around for Pulsar.
There's just so many of these massive team fighting ultimates. Didn't even have to show Affliction in this one. It is going to be a near team wipe. Only Pars, who is off elsewhere, split pushing for a Walker, stays alive for the moment. It's a Singularity. The second that's done, even with that fantastic swap to get the entire team out of the pit, it's immediately Saya with the Chain Gang. It's the rest of that fight coming in. Melee Creeps just too good at farming it up. They have 1 rejuve remaining as they'll look to siege.
Let's push York.
All right, well, maybe the end of the road here for Pulsar. Melee Creeps, they come in with a comp that has a very clear game plan and execute with extreme precision. Stage 1 Patron about to go down, still 1 rejuve in the tank. A little bit low on ult, so we'll see how careful Melee Creeps wants to be. You can make the argument you can just stay and end here, but sometimes teams will look at this situation like this and be like, well, again, we don't want to throw given the team comps, and we're gonna get a replay here of the swap that opens up for 2 crystals to be stolen.
That was 2 players blocked off, had to last second go in for the swap. It was really so nice for Scout against his former teammates, but when you're down this much, the damage is going to come in at the end. The wipe was fantastic. And now a 40k deficit. Melee Creeps back up, get their buy, and now looking for the fight to end the game.
And for Melee Creeps again, they are not really taking any chances here. They're still giving Pulsar plenty of respect. Again, I think in these sorts of drafts, you have to, when so much is based around keeping your advantage. But final opportunity here, Affliction
3.
out, gonna strike 3. And for Pulsar Esports, is there anything left to bring this back in their favor? They got John Silo. There's still 1 rejuve crystal in reserve. And the rest of the fight just completely in favor of Melee Creeps. And Mimi, that's going to seal the deal. Melee Creeps, they get their right to a rematch up against Popper's Pupils.
And they do it in such different fashion than how they won last week. It still looked like the old Melee Creeps locking in John on that M1 every game, playing maybe some of those similar stylings to what you've expected from this team, but this was something different. They come in with a unique read. They draft an early McGinnis. They don't draft any traditional scaling carry, and it works out massively. Goober, Saya, those 2 took over early. The rest of the team was there with massive ults late. I love the approach to the game from them, and the execution was near flawless in this one.
No swings and roundabouts here, just a straight road to a Melee Creeps victory. That was disgusting. What a performance coming out from them here for this best of 1 ZP. I am shooketh, I tell you.
I think it's just a great example of the fact that you have your basic Deadlock compositions that are tried and tested with, you know, options in the early to late game, but you can play drafts and can play for a game where you get the advantage and never let it go. I think it's risky in Deadlock's history because teams are not consistent enough to make it happen, but Melee Creeps, they went all in on a strat that carried significant risk in a best of 1, and it pans out. So to me, all the credit to the Melee Creeps.
And OC's with a massive affliction as well. That 5-man affliction that he was able to beat me in the boss pit. I was losing my mind. As soon as that happens, I mean, what are you supposed to do as Pulsar? Just disengage and hope for the best.
This was just the worst possible comp you could run into in any mid-pit fight. I really like how they were so willing to force that key objective both times that it came up in this map, and the team fighting around it. Even with having all of these big ultimates, these big tools available, it still takes a level of execution to not overly layer them at the same time. They did really well throughout that one. And man, I just got to give it to Goober as well. I think he got that first kill of the match pretty early on and just did not slow down throughout. His holiday is so incredibly good. It was last week, it was here again. He's one of my favorite players to watch with just how mechanically skilled he is, especially on these very movement heavy heroes.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. ZP, looking at how Goober was able to play this, it's just constant like pressure, constant really strong barrels, being a nuisance, Veil Walker as well to make it even more devastating a threat. It was very well done.
It was one part flowing into the other, right? Is that if you don't have pieces that feel good in the first 10 minutes of the game, you're not going to be able to make the McGinnis work, because you still need a certain amount of lane pressure and dominance in the game to actually use McGinnis to get Guardians down super early and actually start to get that edge. So when you wonder, it's like, how did McGinnis work? You actually do have to look to Goober and be like, okay, that was a key part. And then elsewhere, you had Saya continually adding pressure to parts of the game. But the part that was really interesting to me, despite the swap, making this more interesting than normally it would, is that the melee creeps comp that they drafted was also particularly heinous when it came to just making mid-boss misery for the other composition, to where it's just hard to go up against Singularity in general, and then you pair it up with Chain Gang, the ability to wall off, Lash, and then like for the fight after, the Affliction that's there, so long as melee creeps wasn't far behind, mid-boss was always going to be an advantageous battleground for them. So in a way, this is like a comp that drafted not only for early game tempo, but also for mid-boss dominance, and they played those two parts of the game incredibly well.
Yeah, I agree. The comp was devastating. Goober, 14 kills and only the 1 death. And Mimi, I know you're a bit of a Lash enjoyer yourself. It felt like even though the comp as a whole would just have this devastating power, Braden didn't even have to do that much on Lash alongside all of this power. But even having that tool as well would have been just a devastating blow to Pulsar.
Yeah, had a few death slams that were pretty nice in there, but it's hard to point out any one ult when you're looking at how cohesively good all of these team fights were. Interesting build for Birdie. He's picking up the Echo Shard. I think that was on the wall. So when they were going for these mid fights, he's just walling off both sides at once with that Echo Shard. This is a really creative approach as a whole, that we just draft the mid-boss Nightmare Blunt rotation to come out, and man, did it ever look good.
I have to say, as a bit of a McGinnis enjoyer myself, I was playing this exact Echo Shard wall build today. And it's just silly because you max out the wall, there's turrets everywhere, everyone's like, what's going on? This is silly. And with the Heroic Aura as well, you're just able to do a lot of damage, a bit of scary, considering that the turrets are targets you don't want to have to be focusing ZP when you've got all these other threats around you, so it can be really annoying.
Yeah, and honestly, as we look at the stat screen here, one thing I think you gotta give credit to also, we talk a lot about Saya at times being the guy that's like going in, sacrificing his body for the team. Well, he was going in, but there was no sacrifice. It was just all Billy. And yeah, you could point a lot to like the early game tempo and being ahead, but Saya was also a big part of just continually like finding opportunities on the Billy, going for highly aggressive chain gangs. And there's multiple ways that Pulsar maybe could have stalled things out and gotten back into the game, but melee creeps, I think this is one of the best examples we've seen of a team that was able to get an early advantage and press that advantage to get as many fights as possible. And, we talk about the Goober and McGinnis, or rather the Holiday and McGinnis, but I think this also doesn't work without a Billy just helping you keep the pressure on once you generate that early lead.
10-0, looking fantastic. And speaking of fantastic, we have a $20 tip coming in from Cold Hot Cocoa saying, is that Billy on the desk? Because I'm hearing the GOAT. I'm sure they're referring to Mimi and not ZP. What do you think about that, Mimi?
I think I just work here. It's my first day. I'm not in the business of replying to that one. I plead the fifth, Your Honor.
Okay, fair. Let's plead the fifth, move on to MVP. Who's it going to be? We've got Holiday, Goober, doing so much in that game. Is this justified, ZP? What do you think?
No, he should have gotten 300 more souls, and then the total souls would have been 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 across the entire board. But I mean, yeah, given that you had a strategy that was entirely based around early game dominance, and certain heroes were more impactful than others in the early game, yeah, I think this is entirely justified, because if Goober doesn't have a good early game, we're judging this a lot more harshly. I mean, you have not only us, but the community going, oh my God, they picked McGinnis? Melee creeps washed? Like, there's so many ways that without a good early game that this draft looks way different with, people criticizing with the benefit of retrospect. But no, instead, Goober had a really good early game, was the linchpin, and set everything up into motion.
You pointed it out, Mimi, as well. Poor Connor in this game, just constantly getting lassoed and pulled away. The goo ball had no chance.
Yeah, he was kind of getting cyberbullied by Goober in this game. Goober was out of control, though. I think in particular, we talked a lot about the lassos, but his precision with the barrels and how quickly he's chaining that in with the rest of his mobility on this character, just so incredibly comfortable in his hands. I think Holiday is one of the most fun heroes to watch a great player on, and I mean, damn, is Goober a great player on that hero? I really hope that we get to watch a little bit more in the money match of his Holiday.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. Love to see it. I don't know whether or not we'll see. Well, I mean, maybe we'll see McGinnis against Popper's Pupils here, ZP, but it does seem. I don't know. I have no clue anymore, considering what we just saw in that draft. What do you think?
Well, okay. The one thing I'll say is, lights just go dark over on the other camera.
GB heard my joke earlier. He's cut the power on me. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's gone. But no, the one thing I'll still question is that unless there was some really strange things going on in the NA scrim meta, where, again, we don't always know all the scrim bucks. I still question why you need to get the McGinnis that early in the draft. Like, is this well known? They're like, guys, we got to get rid of the McGinnis. Like, they're going to run the strategy. It actually might have been, but that's the thing I look at is like, okay, great, you made the McGinnis work, but maybe draft it a little bit later. I guess the only thing I'd say is that if you're doing Dynamo, you have to reserve a later spot for the Dynamo anyways, because you will get countered by Sinclair's. So even if you're doing a low tier pick, your low tier pick still has to go higher than the Dynamo because of the inherent counter pick potential of a Sinclair.
Yeah, no one wants that Sinclair about when you've got the Dynamo on that side. And John also actually on the Dynamo, fair to say. I think 7-0, really putting on a lot of great pressure early on. Looking good as it does stand. And that means Melee Creeps is going to be in our best of 3 going up against Popper's Pupils. We get the big matchup from last week. Again, Mimi here. I can't wait for the logos. I'm hoping it's going to happen again.
Yeah, you think the production's running it back with the smooch between the two of them? Maybe they've earned it, because the money match last week was super entertaining. That game too, an incredibly close one. I think that one mid-boss fight, it goes a little different. It could have been Melee Creeps a game, but they've come back in with a super interesting game plan for the challenger match. The team looks on point. I think this one is bound to be another close final.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, well, thank you very much, guys. We are going to go to a short break, and when we return, our best of 3, the money match here for North America. Popper's Pupils goes up against Melee Creeps.